Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Q&A session of 25th International Film Festival of Kerala. We have with us now Mr. Indranil Roychowdhury, director of Debris of Desire, which is being shown in the Kaleidoscope section of the festival. He will be in conversation with Mr. Baradwaj Rangan. Indranil Roy Chowdhury is an alumnus of FTII. He graduated from FTI in 1995, and he continued to make short films and TV commercials and documentaries and television shows for a long time. And his first film, Foreign, was selected at the Shanghai New Talents and the NFDC Film Bazaar and screened at several international film festivals across the world. Debris of Desire was screened at the Moscow International Film Festival and Shanghai International Film Festival. We are glad to have you here. Indranil, a warm welcome to this session. Thank you for joining us here today. And Mr. Indranil is in conversation with Mr. Baradwaj Rangan. For film lovers, he doesn't need an introduction, actually. He's India's one of the most leading film critics. For a long time, he has been working with the Hindu as a deputy editor. He now works with the Film Companion, where we all watch his very interesting shows about new films from South, all over the world. And I think his two remarkable books, one about A Conversation with Maniratnam and Dispatches from the Wall Around the Corner, which is about journeys into Indian cinema. These two books are very remarkable one, which I also personally like very much. A very warm welcome, Baradwaj, to this show, and thank you for agreeing to join. And now over to both of you. Have a good Q&A session.
Thank you, IFFK Bandhu, and thank you, Indranil, for this conversation and for your film. Now, you begin by, this is a film that is based on two stories by Manik Bandyopadhyay. I wanted to ask, the film is basically two stories in parallel. Are these the two stories that you took from this author?
Yes, I did. But the thing is that these stories are written in the 1950s context, early 1950s. So what we had to do was completely change the context. What we took from the stories are essentially the core ideas of what happens there. Of course, the social context of the stories have completely changed because those stories were happening in Calcutta post-partition, late 1940s, early 1950s. But somehow, while we were, this was just a casual discovery, while we were reading those stories, we discovered, me and my co-writer, Roychowdhury, that the desolation and the emptiness and the solitariness of 1950s were not so different from the one that we are facing right now. And we found that this story could easily be accessed through things that are happening in our city or in our times at this point of time. So, and it was also an interesting exercise because we thought, although the physical contexts of the stories were so different, but there were elements in the story which could have happened right here, right now. Yeah.
Right. And I think what's so fascinating about this film is that typically when a director takes a story, they make the film out of one story. Or if they take two stories, then the film is basically one story, a break, and then the second story. But you have these two stories running in parallel throughout the movie, and you have these lovely intersecting devices like these like the priest at the beginning who goes from the milieu of the jail to the milieu. I'm not trying to spoil anything, but to the milieu of the jail to the milieu of the sex workers, basically hinting at like a future linking of the stories, or even the rag picker that I have to talk about because to me she came across as a very almost like a Kieslowskian character. There's one, I don't know if you like the director or not, but
I love Kieslowski.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it basically reminded me of the unifying, that old woman man in the three colors thing. So you have these lovely intersecting devices. What made you say that these two stories should run in parallel and not, like I'll film one story and then, I mean, what is the connecting thing that you discovered in both?
This, I think this is the project that we all are encountering at this point of time. There's this famous thing that most of the stories have been told now. In the sense, if you're talking of 2021 and you're a filmmaker, what new stories are you going to do? The stories are all told. I think the project is connections, right? I mean, all what we are trying to, understand and probably discover through our work is how things are connected. So it's not that we knew that these things could be connected. We said, let's see if they can be connected. That was the project, that it could be an interesting, because telling these two stories independently would not be very exciting, because these stories or these kind of stories have been narrated before, in different formats, of course, in different styles. Of course, if I do it in the present time, my stylistic devices, my language would be different, but the stories would remain the same. We realized that by connecting them, the stories actually would transform themselves. So it's not that we discovered it. We said, let's do this project and see whether they can be connected. And the gut feeling was that they are actually coming from the same landscape. They're coming from the same socio-political, desolation that one encounters in our city. So I said that why can't they be connected, and why shouldn't they be connected? So while we started writing, we immediately felt that no, they're cousin stories actually, in that sense that they touch each other. Of course, then you have to work on the narrative devices of how to actually bring them together and then take them away. Those are technical things. But from the very first moment, we realized that they are from the same landscape, actually. Yeah.
I love the way you begin the story, because there's a lovely breaking of hierarchy that you do. Typically, you see this powerful man and these people who are scared of him approach him. And typically we assume that we are going to see the story of this powerful man, because he's being given so much of importance, and but then you kind of break that and move away to two male characters, one being the person that is the Satya character, and the second one being Chandu. What did you see any parallels between both of them, the two men?
Yeah, they're all victims of toxic masculinity, both of them. I'm sure you can make that out here. It's pretty evident, but they don't know what's wrong with them.
Right.
That is what ails us. And that is not true for characters who come from subaltern backgrounds. It's also something that I'm sure we encountered in upper class, upper middle class, male landscapes also. That most of us, we don't know what's eating us up as men, and then the very fact that that the world as you knew has changed, the patterns have changed. Yes, at the same time, you don't have the wherewithals, nor the understanding, nor the compassion or the courage to actually understand the new dynamics or be comfortable with that. So all you end up is attacking, because the story finally is that of not being able to trust. I think if you look at this entire gamut of what happens throughout is this desperate desire to trust and then not being able to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that sense, they are all similar.
Yeah, and I found it interesting that both the women are similar as well in a way, because they both are having a tough life, but they are not complaining about it. They've decided to do something about it. One has said, okay, my husband has resulted in me being in this situation, but not once do you find her complaining about it. Even that lovely story that she says about going back after a few years to that house and checking out what the family is like. She's not really tearful or anything like that. It's more like an incident. And similarly, when you look at Chandu's wife, she has said, okay, I need this for my son. I need this for me, maybe. And she's just going ahead and doing these things. In a way, you get away with the feeling that over the years, I mean, We saw this in Mahanagar in the 60s, and we're still seeing this, that women are stronger than men when adverse situations hit them.
I think they're evolutionarily better. I think, in that sense that they're far more easy about change, and their capacity to adapt, simply because they are lower in the hierarchy. Anybody who's lower in the social hierarchy adapts better, because for the two men, their hierarchies have shifted to a point where they don't know what to do with that, because their entire world has gone upside down. With the women, it's not that it has changed much. It's only that the level of violence and the level of aggression probably has changed. It's pattern. But then their ability to understand that and figure that out is naturally far better. So they're more intelligent. Let's put it this way: they're more intelligent. They're more sorted than the men, which is what my experience always tells me, especially with lower class working women. I have always felt that their even if they're uneducated, their wisdom of life is far better than the men that they have. It's always the case. Yeah.
How did this happen to become an Indo-Bangladeshi co-production?
Well, this was a little incidental, in the sense we've been this has got to do with the reality of Bengali cinema also, and one of the primary things that I've been constantly working and talking about is you have to combine the two Bengals in terms of one film market. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to make the kind of films that we do. So we've been doing that, talking about it, figuring out what can be done, because there are these two countries, and there's lots of internal issues and external things that one needs to deal with. But co-production is one way of bypassing that, process. Honestly speaking, governments are involved, and when governments are involved, you have to do a lot of paperwork and a lot of things. Censorship rules are different in two countries, so it's not an easy process. And I don't think this is the final way to go. Also, the final way is to find a common market digitally, which a lot of people are trying in different ways. So our idea was to find out ways of doing things together. My other thing about working with Bangladeshi production systems is the actors they have, because I think they have phenomenal talent, which has not been showcased, and very few people in our part of Bengal actually know about the kind of work that they do. So they've got phenomenal actors. We have used some of them here, and that's one little desire I always have is to also the freshness of the faces. You get tired seeing similar people doing similar roles, so that's another excitement that I have.
And I'm glad you did that, because it's in a way, you like just you said, the freshness of the faces. If people in Bengal don't get to see much of Bangladeshi cinema, people in other parts of the country don't get to see anything at all, because it's like, unless the rare festival film emerges or something like that, that whole thing is such a mystery that nobody knows. So I'm glad this happened. In the stories that you took the source from, are they from Bengal, or are they also Bengal?
No, they are all there. Both the stories are written in the Calcutta context.
Calcutta, in the context. Okay, all right. One thing that again, I'm trying not to be spoilery about this, and let me word this a little carefully, is I just loved how the tangents happen between the two stories, in how the male from one story runs into the male from another story, but it's so beautifully backed up, because he's in that position because his wife has a job, and he wants to kind of earn a lot of money to kind of restore his hurt ego, and so these kind of, when you there are so many tangent points that can happen, right? But what made you say that when writing, that this seemed right, that it's the two men who should meet rather than, let's say, the two women?
Yeah, true that. I don't know about this, in the sense I didn't decide that the two women should not meet. I think practically it is a little difficult for the two women to meet for purely circumstantial reasons. Although you've seen that, elements from her story actually, meets the sex worker in the parlor once.
Yeah.
And that for me, that look exchange was, I don't know what it meant, but it conveyed a lot for me, because that's
beautiful. It's I mean, when they just turned and looked at each other.
Yeah. So I've been always trying to connect this, but the Chandu meeting Satya, of course, required, because of the way the story was getting developed, because they had to interact at one point of time. If they didn't, then their fates would not have been tied together, which is what we wanted also to do. Whether it's a good decision or not, I will take some time to figure out. We could have easily decided that, let's keep this expectation and let them never meet. That is also one of the ways of approaching the story. And that's something that after making the film, it's something that struck me, and we didn't try that out. We always assumed that they will meet at some level. But maybe at some stage we could also do some other film where, we always have these expectations of things meeting, but they don't, and even if they don't, they actually do meet, in that sense. But there is a structural, whenever you see these kind of, these diptychs happening, even in a film like Masan, I was just, watching that. There is this desire to kind of always merge the lines after a while, Sometimes they are arbitrary, sometimes they are not. In this particular case, we had a narrative impulse, of course, as you can figure out, because otherwise they would not be caught into the same wire, in that sense. Yeah.
No, I think there's it's always difficult to answer writing questions. So thank you so much for that answer, because sort of, it's a difficult thing to talk about, a very instinctual kind of process. But I think it works in a way, because otherwise, it's the two storylines would still have merged the way you end the film, where we see the people at the end. But this kind of gives I love the fact that they've met each other, yet they've not met each other. It's like you're showing the two, it's literally a tangent, they just kind of cross paths for a second and then kind of separate again. So it's like the worlds meet and yet don't, that's a very beautiful, texturally soft thing that happens in the...
Even in the end, they take a while, and you don't know whether they recognize each other.
Yeah.
Because, of course, you figure out that they will eventually do that, but you're not sure whether they do that at the first chance.
Right.
And, also probably the fact that, we were also dealing with the theme unconsciously, as to the idea of the fact that, they come from this social strata where and we have that social structure where, you have this tremendous greed and desire to succeed, to make things the way, society asks you to do. But the moment you cross the line, and you are treated in a manner which is completely different from the rest of it. You're very disposable. You're extremely disposable, because there is absolutely nothing that would work for you in case you are caught doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you will not have much of a chance of going back or managing it. It's a for Satya, it's a double blow, because it's not just his own situation, but also the moral burden with which he'll have to deal with, and we don't know what happens there. We live, and we end the story with the fact that he will live with that that double thing, that despite the fact that he finally changes and decides to act according to his mind or his conscience, but what is done is done, and we don't know, and we want to keep that feeling that we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the I was so involved in the film by the end that it killed me not to know that phone conversation. What was, is she going like so this one thing at the end really killed me, because it was like I really needed to know. I was so involved in the film that I really needed to know the contents of the phone conversation that Soma was getting, and I needed to know like, is she going to stay or not? I was like, really, please stay, because we kind of know that these things are so, everything is happening in parallel, and in a way. So so you are of course leaving us with an open answer, but what is your gut feel? What happens to her? I mean, with both the characters, let's talk about both the female characters. What is it that happens with them?
I wouldn't know about beauty. I wouldn't know because it's anybody's guess. With Shoma, I know because Shoma is more predictable. She's the only stable element in the film,
right,
which gives us hope, which makes us feel a little better about the world. At the same time, that a lot of her hope is based on ignorance. That is also her tragedy, that she is trained to be hopeful, but her hope is also not, it's not based on understanding.
Yeah.
So that she will do her best. Okay, she'll stand by her husband. She's going to do whatever she can. Maybe she'll stick to the job because she knows she'll need the money. She'll come back to the job and then she'll fight out the case, and then they'll have to go through the usual bribing processes, and they'll take more time because they have less money. It's as simple as that. At the level that the case would happen, it's just a question of how much influence and how much money you have to trick the system. And I'm sure she's going to spend more time than an average upper middle class person to get her husband out of this. So that's what's going to happen. And what's going to happen through that's a different film actually.
Yeah.
So her attempt at taking her husband out of the whole, legal thing probably would also make a huge difference between her and her husband's relationship. That actually is a separate film, frankly. And that's something we thought about. It. We can, we don't like to make sequels, and that's not a great idea probably. But it's a completely different thing that's going to happen after.
Right. So my question was like, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but it's also like, sometimes when you're discussing a story and you have a co-writer, sometimes, it's like, should we, shouldn't we, should we, I'm sure you kind of grapple with that, at what point should we really close this film? It's like, so I just was curious about that. So thanks for the thing, because it's like, at the one sense, it goes on. There is no real closure. There is not like this ends and, that's it. The story is solved. The mystery is solved. It's not like that at all. So it makes complete sense. But emotionally, I think I was. I know.
And a lot of people have told me, I mean, although this film has not been screened in that way in India, in fact, this is the first time it's been screened in India, but my friends have seen it, and there have been like little private home screenings for 10 to, and everybody gets very uneasy about the ending. For some reason that we want to know more, and why did you just quit? And somehow people didn't expect. It's very sudden, that you hold on to that shot and people expect that something's going to happen, and then it ends. I don't know, I felt instinctively that was the exact thing to do, because you are also, as a filmmaker, throughout this film, constantly expressing your helplessness about everything. Your love and also your helplessness. So all you do, and that you love and you stay away, because you can't intervene beyond the point, and there is nothing. You are observing what is happening, and you are, deeply participating in those emotional journeys. But you also know that there's a huge distance between you and what is happening there. So,
right. So, Indranil, let me ask you, do you think, what is your opinion about the ability of films or cinema to change society? What is that why you make films in a way? Has it ever crossed your mind that movies, have the power to change society? And B, the reason I ask with this particular film is that this is a story about lower income, lower class people, and it is going to be consumed mostly by an upper middle class, upper class festival going audience, who will kind of, of course, the story is very moving and all that kind of stuff, but it's never, I don't think it's actually going to be seen by the class of people that it actually portrays, simply because they're not going to have access to this. So is it a bit like also, are you just like, okay, I need this story moved me, and I need to put it out there in the best way possible. Is that all, or is there something more when you take up such a story?
Yeah, there's so many triggers to make a film. Very personal triggers. For me, one of the triggers of making this film is that we have, on a very stylistic side, we wanted to make a film where we would constantly erase the presence of the filmmaker. That was, and see how, because our natural tendency, the training is to go in, to be dramatic, to comment, to underline. And, we were also, for us, taking this challenge, and that's something, this is not that the journey has ended. We'll probably carry this on. So how much you can erase the filmmaker as you tell, because, and move away from that. I completely understand that this will have a restricted audience in that sense, that the people about whom this film is made would probably not get to see that. This film will be released on television also, in Bengali television. So that is my hope, in that sense, that finally, although this is not exactly a great way to watch films, but finally I have seen that, the real audience for which you are making the film, finally they get to see the film either through television or through torrents over a long period of time. That is my experience. And and that it takes on its own life. So it reaches people in its own time, and they write back to you, or they don't. And you discover that a huge amount of people actually, it circulates and gets its own life in a completely different zone where we don't get to know. It's completely outside the purview of media. That is one factor that makes me very hopeful. That happened with my last film. And I've seen that, although the average, the cinema halls and all that were restricted, and we couldn't really market the film that much. But the life that it had on the illegal torrent, thing was crazy. Was actually crazy. In that sense, I would, especially among teenagers and slightly younger people for whom the film was made. So at some level, although this film is less emotional and less, in that sense, the emotions are kind of more compressed, I feel that it will find its own audience in its own time. Okay, and I don't really want to control beyond the point, and I realize that it's an energy not worth focusing, because beyond a point there is not much you can do. And also the thing that as when you said that Bengali, this is particularly about Bengali cinema, that Bengali cinema in the recent years has been full of South Calcutta, middle class, upper middle class mush. And, although I have nothing per se about upper class people, against that, but the stark, overwhelming preference for, good looking interiors and people talking about relationship is a little overwhelming also, in that sense. So instinctively, probably also, you tend to choose stories which, also give you environmentally different landscapes. You get to see, and there is also, as you said, whether film influences audience and they make some changes in their lives, in a way they do in the choices that you make, not consciously through one film, but you keep repeating a certain, cultural and visual environment. Somehow the audience that you're talking to keep feeling that this is probably the world, and this is how the world plays out, and this is all that the world needs to think about. So you don't make these decisions consciously while writing a film, but probably you do it when you live your life, outside the world. But and then let those decisions come in, and when they need to come.
So thank you so much for the Indranil, for this beautiful film, and for bringing it to IFFK and for answering these questions. It's always difficult, I know, to answer questions about something that is born from, from your insides, and then have to put them in words. It's sometimes not the easiest of things, but I think you did a great job. So thank you so much.
So much. It was very nice talking to you, and this was like and it's so obvious that you've kind of been with the film while it was played out, and you were not asking me questions which you thought should be asked. I mean, you were asking me because you saw the film so well, And I'm really, really honored that you did that. So thank you.
Thank you, Indranil. Thank you, and thank you, IFFK.
Thank you. Thank you.